This is for my folkers who got bills overdue. This is for my folkers, check 1, 2. I've been an organizer. Well, I've considered myself a revolutionary since I was 15, and been involved in a few very correct organizations. Very correct, very small, but always making the right decisions to not work with other people, right? And I've been to a lot of demonstrations by even other organizations who kind of have the same way of operating. Lots of 10 people demonstrations, lots of demonstrations with a few people with picket signs marching back and forth in front of a doorway. I've been involved in a lot of campaigns that nobody in the particular city that the campaign is going on knows about. Those are all reasons why I started doing music in the first place. But that being said, when the Occupy Wall Street movement happened in general, I visited the site in New York, and I immediately was turned off. I thought, this is, and really what was going, I was like, oh, this is just some hippie shit, and this General Assembly thing, this just takes too long, nothing will ever get done, nothing will get decided. And really what was happening is, since it didn't look like what it was supposed to look like, based on, the theory that we've been reading and, everyone's calculations of how it will happen, since it didn't look like that, it didn't seem like a possible situation that could ever turn revolutionary or could advance, and I wrote it off. Then in Oakland, various friends started getting me to come by there, and probably the things that you saw of me performing there was before I was even involved in Occupy Oakland. Little by little, I started to see that, hey, the chaos and the disorganization is just what people need, right? Usually you come to a meeting and there's a couple very, studied professional organizers, or professional revolutionaries, who kind of guide the meeting, even if it's a mass meeting or whatever. And there's parameters on what it's going to do, because there's a line already. There's a political line, so there's a parameter on what that meeting is going to do, what it's going to accomplish, and it's guided to a certain extent. So people come to those, and then they go home, because it's all taken care of anyway. Or they disagree, and there's not going to be any room for much disagreement. So, but the truth is, it was so chaotic that everyone figured that, hey, I could join this, and it's so chaotic that I can have a say in this.
It's about y'all. It's about people who are dedicating their lives to destroying the system that creates ghettos. It's a song called Ghetto Blaster.
So yeah, all of those things that people that consider themselves revolutionaries were against in a so-called movement, it's exactly what made people feel comfortable with coming there. Yeah, that there wasn't a lot of predetermined strategy, but what that allowed for was people to feel like they can come in and mold what that strategy might be. And so for a lot of people that considered themselves revolutionaries, this is a frustrating process, because, hey, we got to go over this shit that I already know. right? And hey, we got to move this whole group of people into agreeing with us or this and that. But that's, I think that, and I've been in political organizations and I've been in disciplined parties. Well, one disciplined party. And often it is the line of that particular party that their party has the right line. They're going to keep pushing the right line, and their party will grow, and it will become the revolutionary party, and it will make the revolution because everyone else's line is wrong, and it will grow. But that's not what's going to happen. If there's a revolution, what's going to happen is there's going to be a whole bunch of people that disagree on a lot of shit, but agree on a few basic things. With the general strike, we saw people coming out that had never been involved in anything before. But what it was they saw a leverage point. They saw a leverage point of labor being withheld as being a way to negotiate change of some sort, you know. And it's a basic principle, but it's one that the left has left alone since the 60s. It's called class analysis. Been skirting around that for a long time. Even communist organizations, besides the paper, we organize around everything. I've been involved in, you know, most of the police brutality campaigns that have happened in Oakland since the late 80s. And what's good is that it points out the brutality of the police. But we still don't have a way to have a winning fight around that. And that's partially because we know the truth is that the police are racist because racism is used as an excuse for capitalism, right? Why are this group of people impoverished and poor? Oh, it's because they're immoral and they're savage. And that's why they're that way. Because otherwise, if you look at people of color in any other way, then you think then it's an indictment of the system, right? And so the police themselves have to feel that the problem with crime is the people that are doing the crime, right? They can't think that it's a systematic problem because then it's an indictment of themselves and they know that they're doing the wrong thing. Anyway, but the point is that the community gets frustrated with those campaigns, I believe, my opinion. You know, you go to so many police brutality campaign demonstrations and like, okay, what next? What do we do? And, you know, people end up feeling disempowered. Like, okay, yeah, I went to a demonstration, but it really, I didn't even see how it could fit into any sort of struggle for power. In the United States, since the 60s, because of the dissolution of the Communist Party, you had various organizations that were trying things in new ways, right? And one of the new ways was to organize sectors of the working class that hadn't been organized before, and to do it in different ways. In doing this, though, they left behind the middle of America. In the 20s and 30s, places like Utah and Montana, the middle of the United States, were considered by the FBI hotbeds of communist activity because they were. They were radical labor movements. You know, the whole idea about people carrying guns, even though liberals in the U.S. are really against it, it was because people were fighting Pinkerton security. They were going into battles. There was a class war element to that, right? But the left those people alone, partly due to McCarthyism and due to the United Front Against Fascism and the Communist Party going silent during the 40s and not fighting with, you know, not engaging in struggle in the U.S. so that Hitler could be beat, came back, and all of a sudden they'd been living their lives as a secret to the people around them, and they had didn't have it. Their base was able to be taken out from under them, right? So a lot of, all across the United States, what they consider to be conservative base of the working class, it's really people that are talking about the same problems that have been being talked about for decades by communists and socialists and revolutionaries of various ilks. But they were left alone. There was no organizing being done there, so they got organized by the right. And similarly, in Oakland, those struggles had been left alone. Like, there'll be even people on the left saying, okay, we need to fight violence. There's a lot of violence going on in the community. And so the idea is, okay, we're going to do these classes that teach people about conflict resolution. No, it's not about conflict resolution. People don't have, no, if there's an underground economy, there's going to have to be a way to regulate it. It's illegal. So the regulation is not going to come through lawsuits like other businesses are. It's going to come through physical force. If you want to fight the violence that's going on in the community, you're going to have to fight to change the wealth distribution in that community. It's something that can be done right away if you attack things from the idea that one of the most important struggles that we could engage in right now are radical militant labor struggles. That doesn't mean with the existing unions, if they want to come along, fine, and whatever. But that just means done in a way that doesn't just only handle the wages of that particular group of workers. And we're in a situation where this is starting to happen. In the U.S., Walmart workers, like across the country, went out on strike. Had a pretty hardcore strike by Chicago teachers. Things like that wouldn't have happened. May Day, you had unions across the U.S. walk out on May Day. Wouldn't have happened last year. People didn't even know what May Day was unless you were in a, revolutionary grouping or something like that. I know that in the U.S., one of the things that put a lid on the viability of unions and strikes was the Taft-Hartley Act, which meant you could only strike about something happening in that particular workplace. You couldn't strike against something that was owned by the person that was, there's so many laws that basically make it strategically very hard for a strike to win. And so you're going to have to break the law in order for that to happen. The other thing is that you're going to have to do is you're going to have to physically fight and keep out scabs. And that's something that any union worth its salt knows, but it's something that definitely is not being taught nowadays. And what I'm saying is that people don't join the union because, and I think overall, people are not wanting to join a union because working within those laws, you're not going to win anything anyway, right? So, and that's the whole thing with the movement. It's viability. Like, people came out in Oakland for the general strike because it was viable. It was, wow, okay, here's something that can win. Yeah, if we shut this port down, they will lose X amount of dollars, and we have something there, rather than just some vague idea. So it's not that people don't want to join a movement. It's that people aren't shown the power. Like, what we're doing, what we should be doing is showing what the power in the movement is. Culture, music, art, any of that it's all the same. It's the same as talking. It's people communicating ideas. So yeah, anything that communicates an idea has a role to play, you know, in it all, right? So if we want, I don't think hip hop specifically has a role to play. There's all sorts of music that people listen to, all of that. There's all sorts of art. There's writing prose and writing fiction that all has a role to play. But I think that what we're doing when we do those things is we're trying to inspire people and show folks that there is a way to change the situation around you. You know, well, at least with my music, I'm not someone that tries to just point out what's wrong, because everybody can do that and does do that, and it doesn't lead to action. Sometimes pointing out what's wrong by itself leads to inaction, because it gives you this idea that there's this all-powerful, you know, oligarchy that you can't do shit about, and so you might as well just play video games and call it a day. But so my music is hopeful, and it tries to show that there are things that we can do about it. But what's more effective than the music doing that is the actual action. Because I can say that all day. Whether you believe me or not is really going to have to do with whether you see it happening in real life.
Yeah.